everyone, it's Elena and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to do an update video on a video that I did almost 2 years ago about my high school experience and what I learned from it. Because I went to a school which was a United World College, which is part of a group of private schools, but they claim to be more of a movement. So they even have a mission statement. And yes, I had to Google it again. I do know like the rough outline of it, but the exact mission statement is to make education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. And there are quite a few schools around the world, and the idea is that you put students from different countries in the world, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, into one school. They live there together, it's a boarding school, and they learn from each other and with each other. And yeah, that's supposed to have a lifelong impact on the students, and I thought I would make these update videos every once in a while to check whether that is actually true. So in my last video, I made 5 points about what I learned from UWC, and I'm going to reflect on these 5 points and yeah, basically determine whether I think they still hold true now that I've graduated from UWC 2 years ago. The first thing I mentioned in my video is that it's important not to forget that there's more to a country than whatever the news reports. Because yes, what the news reports is important, but then there's also this individual perspective on what it's actually like to live in that country. So what's the culture like, what are the people like, what's the food like, things like that. And it's important not to forget about that individual perspective. And I think I absolutely still agree with the sentiment, but the problem is I have kind of stopped learning about individual perspectives for lots of countries. And the reason for that is that I moved to a less diverse environment. Because back when I was at UWC and I went to the UWC in Hong Kong, I was surrounded by people from about 80 different nationalities. And then I moved to Cambridge, and Cambridge is significantly less diverse. So now my friendship circle is significantly less diverse, and so I only learn about the individual experience in a few countries. And I think the issue is that when you're not exposed to it and you're not a little bit, reminded of the fact, this is how it's like as an individual, if no one points out that there are different things for individuals that have to be considered than, just a broad statistic in the news, then it's really easy to sometimes forget about that. Because you read the news and you just assume, okay, that just applies everywhere and that's what defines a country. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm not proud of, and I do want to learn more about individuals' experiences again, because I do think that gives you more of a fuller picture. But unfortunately, I recognize that I haven't been doing that a lot for many countries over the years. So yeah, it's definitely something which I think you have to actively seek out once you leave UWC, because then you have to make sure you stay in touch and you keep having these conversations. But it's also so easy not to do that because, well, yeah, you could start a conversation on Messenger, but also we're all busy in uni and stuff. So it's something I think you have to actively seek out, and I think I did not do a good enough job of doing that. And it's something that I definitely should be doing a better job at. But yeah, that's my reflection on the first point. The next thing I talked about was the importance of debates and voicing controversial opinions. And I still agree with that. I still think debating is important. I still think it's important to debate controversial opinions. But I also think, and I also used to think this back then, that there are some opinions which aren't worth debating, which should never be given a platform. So there I would count things like, for example, Holocaust denial. No, you don't deserve a platform. So those things I would not debate, but other than things which clearly cross a line, which should never be crossed, other than that, I'm very happy to have a debate about it. But I think now that I've been out of UWC for 2 years, I've also learned the importance of reflecting on my opinions before voicing them. And that's something I think I didn't do enough when I was at UWC, especially because of the way that our debates were structured. Because we used to have something called Global Issues Forum, and there they would give a presentation on a topic, and then we would just straight up go into debating it. So you didn't have a lot of time to make up your mind, and so you just said the first thing that came to mind. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but now I think I would prefer to actually take some time, think it through, maybe also do a bit of my own research and look into the sources that they cited, and then form my opinion. And that's something I didn't do back then, and I think that's something that I would do now. And I've also learned the importance of reflecting on the system that you're in and that you sort of promote, because UWC does claim to be a movement, And I have reflected a lot on that movement after I left it, because yes, I absolutely love it, and I want to be completely transparent about the fact I still volunteer for them because they gave me an amazing opportunity. They gave me a scholarship to attend a boarding school abroad. I am so grateful for that, and I am giving back to them by volunteering for them. But this video is not made as a collaboration or anything. They don't know I'm making this video, so that's not the case. But I obviously do still like them, and I'm still very positive about them, but I do still think that the movement has big flaws, which I think aren't addressed enough by UWCers, because we like to look towards the outside and, you know, doing charity work, things like that, instead of first examining the flaws that our system has and how we could do better. So some of the things which I thought about in that context were, for example, project weeks, where students would travel abroad to do charity work, which is actually not very sustainable to put students on a flight to do a week of charity work, and we claim to be a sustainable movement. Or the other thing, the inaccessibility of UWC, because not every national committee has enough money to give full scholarships. So some national committees actually do admit based on whether or not your parents can pay for the school. Now, the German National Committee does not do that and guarantees funding to anyone who can't afford the place, but certain other countries can't do that. And that makes UWC still, you know, an inaccessible movement in some areas, and something which has very big inequalities on the globe. And for a movement which wants to bring people together based on their merit, that's a big issue. The next thing I talked about is the importance of speaking up for yourself, because obviously when you live in a boarding school environment, you do sometimes have to say, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, and this is something which made me very uncomfortable to say. Now that I'm 20 years old, I have lived in lots of different dorms. I can say, yeah, I've learned to speak up for myself and just say I'm not okay with that. And I've also learned that that's nothing to be uncomfortable about saying, because it's either you say it or you stay uncomfortable for like the rest of the school year, or maybe even 2 years, depending on how long you have to live with your roommate or your roommates. So yeah, speak up for yourself. Next, I talked about the idea of being able to have an impact regardless of how old you are or how experienced you are. And yes and no about that one. So yes, I still agree you can definitely have an impact, but I think I've also learned the importance of experience. And not necessarily age, but I do think experience does come kind of with age lots of the time. So I do still agree you can have an impact, but I also think you need to evaluate whether you have enough experience to start a certain thing, whether you've reflected enough on it. Students need to, you know, have a bit of experience in order to understand how to actually do research, how to evaluate certain sources, how to look at different sides of a disagreement, and to understand different factors that play a role here and what is the most effective activism that you can do. And sometimes activism can do harm, so you need to be very careful about what you actually do. And I think that definitely does come with experience. Like, I didn't know about lots of these factors until I, you know, was with Amnesty for a few years, and I was like, okay, now I think I start to get some of the concern. I start to know what do I need to research before I even think of what will be an effective campaign, stuff like that. And I do think for that it does take some experience, but I also still agree that it doesn't take years and years and years of experience to do something good in the world. And anyone can go out there and start volunteering for an NGO. So while you may need some experience to actually design a campaign, I still think you can absolutely have a positive impact right now by just signing up for an NGO, for example, for a homeless shelter, or for example, for helping refugees in your area. You can do so much, and you really don't need experience. You will learn from them, and that gets you experience. You need to start somewhere. So don't take this as an excuse not to do something, because anyone can do something positive. And the last thing I talked about in my video was the importance of coming out of your comfort zone in order to grow as a person. And yes, I still agree with that, but I also actually think that over the years I've learned the importance of marking your comfort zone and telling people, I don't want to go further than that. And I think that also makes you grow as a person. It makes you stronger, and it also teaches you to kind of, you know, just draw your boundaries and be unapologetic about them, and that's also okay. I think it is important to occasionally cross your comfort zone boundaries when you feel like it is the right thing to do. But I also think that there are some things where you're just allowed to put your foot down and say, no, I don't want that, and to learn to do that. So yes, it's definitely out of my comfort zone to, you know, move abroad and just do something. Now maybe not so much because I've done it now quite a few times, but back then it definitely was. And I do think that that made me grow significantly. But I also think that, for example, it is out of my comfort zone to drink alcohol. I just don't want it. And yes, I have had moments where people did try to pressure me, like, come on, everybody has a drink, like, you don't want to drink water. And I was like, actually, I do. And you don't get to pressure me into drinking. And the person, when I said it like that, realized what they were actually doing, and they apologized. But, you know, it took a lot of courage on my inside to actually say that, because I'm incredibly shy. So yeah, I know I put my life on the internet, but I'm super, super shy, and I'm so awkward in person. But yeah, that's why it, you know, it took like a lot of courage for me to do that, but drawing my boundary felt really good. So yeah, also sometimes stay in your comfort zone and don't apologize for it. And yeah, that is my reflection on my high school experience. So it's been 2 years since I graduated, and yeah, I still love UWC. I have some criticism about it, but I'm still incredibly, incredibly grateful to them for everything they've done for me, and they have definitely changed my life a lot. And you can't really put into words how much these 2 years changed you, and I think I'm still going to learn a lot in my life about how they actually changed me. But I am so, so grateful for the people who chose to give a scholarship to me to give me that experience, because you guys really, really did a really big thing for me. Thank you. And if you guys want to join the UWC movement, this is not a paid advertisement, okay? But if you guys want to join, the German National Committee has opened its applications for applicants. I'm going to link it down below in the info box if you guys are interested. And if you guys aren't German speakers, then I'm also going to link the International UWC website down below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day. Bye!